Good afternoon, everybody. I'm John Hyde from PublicSectorPM.com.
And I'm Bernardo Torrado from the Project Box. We're your hosts for PMTV, a program where we host group discussions with prominent project managers within the industry.
Now, today we have two very special guests. We have Giancarlo Giranti and Ricardo Viana Vargas. Now, I always forget to check pronunciations of names, so sorry, guys, if I got that wrong. Giancarlo, can you please tell us a bit about yourself?
Yes, hello, everybody. I'm a project manager, and I manage projects in the telco industry, let's say all over the world, which means that this brought me to make some experience how to manage multicultural projects, which is the topic of today. I'm also a business analyst, and apart from project management, I'm working around requirements and find out solutions in order to solve business problems. I'm also a trainer, so making some experience. I enjoy to share my knowledge with people. That's why I'm participating in community like this. And I support also PMI with standards and IIBA with standards. Okay, I enjoy giving speeches in at congresses or PMI or business analyst events.
Thank you, Giancarlo. And Ricardo, please tell us about you.
Okay, good morning, good afternoon, everyone, and it's a pleasure to be here with you. I'm talking directly from Denmark, but I'm Brazilian. I'm a project management specialist. I'm a chemical engineer with a master in Ernest Valley management. I have been working for about 17 years with project management. I have 11 books published in Brazil and also in US about the topic. Right now, I'm the director of the project management practice at the United Nations Office for Project Services. Despite of not being here as a UN, my role at the UN is to make sure that the projects we do on the field in more than 80 countries are successful. We have a team of about 300 project managers and 7,000 people to do work from roads in Afghanistan to shelters in Haiti to refugee camps in conflict areas. So we mostly work in the post-conflict environment. I have also a great time also in the private sector, working in the oil sector in capital projects for oil refineries, oil plants, refineries, and also works on IT and many other places in Africa, US, and Latin America.
Wow, that sounds really fascinating. I think I'd quite like to spend the next 2 hours just talking about that, but actually we've got something else in mind. So just to mention that all of today's guests, including Bernardo and myself, are speaking in a personal capacity, and anything we say isn't representative of the views of the organizations that we work for. Disclaimer over. Bernardo, tell us about what we're going to do, please.
Yeah, we definitely lined up a very great episode for everyone to watch, and today we're going to primarily focus on working within cross-cultural projects. So if you'd like to kick us off with the first question, John, that'd be fantastic.
It's my honor. So, gentlemen, let's start off with thinking about your time working within a cross-cultural environment, whether that be different nationalities or there's all sorts of different ways of interpreting the word culture. Let's pretend that it's nationalities, to keep it simple. What is the most profound lesson you've learned about yourself when working in a cross-cultural environment? And could we put that to Giancarlo first, please?
Yes. I would sum up this with 2 words: cultural sensitivity. This is my best learning, best lessons that I got in working multicultural projects. What does cultural sensitivity means? Means be able to, shape them myself according to the context. Okay. During my experience in Cuba, for example, Cuba is a quite different environment working around the world. So the first time I arrived there, I was very happy because, for Italians, Cuba is a kind of paradise, and everybody aimed to go there for vacation, for example. You can imagine myself going there for work. Everybody was jealous of me because, I was to the Isla Maravillosa. As soon as I arrived there, I got to meet my client, my key stakeholder was the IT manager. We start discussing about work, and after a little while, he looked at me, stared at me, and says, profoundly, "We don't need you here." So I said, "What's wrong here?" So here is it again. "We don't need you here." Very good. As a project manager, I should be able to solve this kind of impasse situation. So I provided him with a contract and saying, "Do you know this document?" And fortunately, he said, "No, I don't know this document." Okay, this document is a document that allow you and me to work together. And this was signed from your boss and my boss. So I leave you with this document and see you in a couple, 3 days in order to discuss how we can collaborate together. After 3 days, I went there. He welcomed me very enthusiastically. We start discussing work. He introduced to all his team, and then he said, "Oh, I arranged a nice office for you," which was 2 blocks away from his office and his team. You can imagine.
Oh, I think we've lost him at a crucial moment. Oh dear. Hopefully he can rejoin us. So let's carry on with that.
Yeah, I think he just joined it. Giancarlo? Yes?
Yes, I lost the connection. I'm sorry.
Okay.
I don't know what happened.
Keep going. We can see and hear you. No problem.
Okay. And after a while, I start working there in the Guantanamo Bay office, as I like to nickname it. And I start thinking in my back mind, why this kind of behavior? And I started to make some research, some study about that, because in spite of working, I was curious to understand how to get along with those people. At the end, I was there to support them, to help them in starting up a new mobile operator. I discovered after that there was a kind of fear or a kind of preoccupation from some foreign alien coming from outside in that kind of context and try to, help them or be in their business. Okay, that's how it was perceived. My approach was anything about that. There was a contract. There are some obligations that you have to respect. We need to work together because the company that I represent, they own the 30% of the shares. No, I try to understand the context before. Try to understand why people behave in this way. Going through books, going through websites, interviewing people in the street. Trying to know how what is their feelings about, working with an alien, okay? And I made this was a great lesson for me, because from there I started feeling in a different way. And all the studies, all the knowledge they acquired from them, they help me in the future experience. Okay. Just two sentences that came in my mind every time that there is a multicultural project that this kind of words are pronounced. And there are two sentences from two anthropologists that I found I put this kind of sentence at the center of my life. Okay. One's own culture provides the lens through which we view the world, and culture is central to what we see, how we make sense of what we see, and how we express ourselves. These two sentences open my mind so broadly, because a few years before I had an experience in Brazil, I couldn't explain myself how people behave in a different way, how I'm able to do. Okay, I find the answer like a mosaic that all the pieces came together. Okay, so my developing a cultural sensitivity, be able to get compliant with any kind of environment. After that, I went to the US, completely different environment.
Okay, Giancarlo. So just a thought springs to mind. How did you adapt your behavior then to work effectively with the Cuban colleagues?
Okay, first of all, learning the environment. Second one, showing them that I was there to support. Okay, in order to do that, you need to put aside any kind of arrogance, any kind of power. But just to found any kind of relationship over respect and sensitivity, interchanging what are the cultural traits. Okay, be curious to understand and to learn how they think and they see their life. Okay, and trying to behave accordingly. Okay, first of all, respect. If you make a mistake, for example, like I did, okay, maybe later we can, talk in something about that. Just apologize, okay? If you are genuine, if you are, honest, and they can see it, and you can make people feel it, they can, forgive it. That's for sure. But if you behave with arrogance or with kind of the snobbish behavior, they don't allow you to have any kind of success. You know what? After 1 year of this behavior, I was in the open space with everybody there.
Great, that's a really good story. So, Giancarlo, I think the message I've taken from what you've just said was through being exposed to a different culture and trying to work in a different culture, the big lesson for you is about, you said, cultural sensitivity and shaping myself so that I work in a way which fits the culture that I'm trying to work within. So I was wondering, Ricardo, whether you would agree. From your experiences of slotting into different cultures, is cultural sensitivity a big deal for you, or is it something else?
Yeah, this cultural sensitivity is for me part of the core of the project. So it's as important as scope of the project. And why I'm telling you this, look, the work we do here at the UN, it engages a completely different set of people. So I was just thinking here, I have just in my floor working for me, around 29 people from 26 different countries in 37 different languages. This is just my floor here. So we have a very, very complex operation and understand the cultural aspects. For example, in Denmark, we have a completely different set of core beliefs on the way that the people behave, comparing with Brazil or comparing with Somalia. So it's very important. So how do we handle this? This cultural aspect is part of our sustainability approach. So we are not just, for example, building a road like the 10,000 kilometers of roads we built in Afghanistan, but we are building access to the people. So we need always to do an extremely powerful stakeholder engagement with all this cultural awareness. Otherwise, we'll fail in the way we do the project. So we fail to engage the communities that we are working with. We fail to engage national capacity because we are not just a construction company working as UN, but we are doing something different. And this cultural awareness is extremely sensitive.
Sounds like
Places is still in conflict. We are talking about post-disaster environment, so very, very complex environment where cultural awareness it's critical. It's critical, as important as all other topics on the project.
Great, Bernardo. I can see you've got some thoughts.
well, I mean, I echo what my colleagues have just explained as far as the importance of it, and I think it also highlights the fact that when you're managing projects, it's not just the technical aspect of managing the project, that the softer skills and having a holistic view as to how you're working together as a team becomes extremely critical. But in addition to what was mentioned, language is an extremely critical component, and I think we kind of talked about this when we were going through our prep. The U.S. English to the U.K. English, for instance. It's quite different. Even though we're speaking English per se, there is the connotations and the delivery of what is being said that is quite different. And from a personal experience, growing up in New York, I've always been used to being very direct. I say what I mean, and of course I'm very sensitive to how I position what I say. But also coming from a background where my family's from Ecuador. Spanish has a multi-level of complexity as to you have to be very careful what you say, because if you say something the wrong way, it can be interpreted completely different from what you originally intended. And that's how I found when I was living in the UK, where there are these hidden messages on what's being told, because there's a level of politeness, I suppose, that you're trying to kind of soften the blow. But the person that's communicating that assumes that you speak and understand the same cultural values and the same language. And I guess when we're thinking about how we manage or work from a cross-cultural perspective, one of the pieces of advice when I was taking some behavioral analysis courses around profiling people, which is never use your logic to understand their logic. And so when you're working with folks who are, whether they speak English or whether they're cross-cultural or whatever the case may be, having the time to truly understand some of the cultural behaviors and why certain people do certain things takes you even further and makes you even more successful as a project manager, because you've taken the time to understand them and understand yourself as well in the process.
Bernardo, I fully agree. I was just taking some notes here. For me, it's one of the things that I learned as a Brazilian in this very diverse environment is that we need to be able to listen. We need to understand what are the core values of other people and not just jump. For example, as Brazilian, of course, I'm very motivated, I move a lot, I talk a lot, but you need to contain yourself, because people have usually a different logic to understand. And this is one of the most amazing things of the work I do as project manager is because when you start listening, you start understanding different perspectives about the life, about the project, about what is really important. And this cultural aspect will address you, first, to improve yourself, and second, to deliver more effectively. And this is a critical piece of, just to give you an idea, we have all the framework on how we manage projects here. And one of the key aspects is a stakeholder, and we are very glad that PMI inserted this as a knowledge area on the 5th edition, because this for us, it's such a critical thing. The technical aspect of the projects we do are high, but nothing compared with capital major projects. But the problem is that one thing is built in a school in New York. The other one is built in a school in South Sudan, 500 kilometers away from anything. So it's a very different, it's not just the bricks. I'm talking about how we can engage everything. So listen is a key aspect for that.
I will just add to that. I think we would want to also add active listening, because what I found is that, especially today's age with technology, at least where I am, you may be in a meeting and there they are, folks on their Blackberries. So they're not really listening. They're just there, and if they hear their name, they're like, okay, they perk up. But I completely agree with you 100% that the active listening and really taking the time to truly and genuinely and authentically wanting to understand the other person takes you that much further. And it also helps minimize conflict and misunderstanding that usually happens when you're working in cross-cultural environments.
I want to add something about what you say, guys. From my experience from Brazil, for example, I was in charge to define some business processes for a startup or a company there. And I used to call meetings, and no one was on time for the meetings, okay? From one side of the coin, you can get nervous because not everybody was at the meeting, was punctual, okay? After we start the meeting, everybody was looking at, was busy with BlackBerry or with emails or answering call and whatever, okay? This is part of the cultural traits, okay? Their understanding of time is completely different than somebody in the North America, for example, okay? Which means that they approach time in like a continuous, okay? Doesn't mean that it is a bad thing, okay? For example, when I did my experience in North America, everybody there work on their work package, and they start thinking to another problem, issue, or topic after they finish what they were doing the previous work package. Otherwise, no way. They don't answer the phone. They don't use text messages. They answer to they use the answering machine and so on. Okay. In the south of America, or the south of the Mediterranean, also here in Italy, if we work with somebody in up to the north of Italy, or up to the south, or down to the south of Italy, you can feel the differences. Okay, they do many things at a time. Okay, which means that there's a different way of approaching people. Okay. Before listening, my suggestion is to clear your mind to any kind of prejudice. Okay, sometimes we are able to, because of the culture, because we look at things according to our way of view things, which means the culture shape our sides of life. Okay, our interpretation of life. We can create some categorization or some stereotypes, okay? And sometimes this can lead to prejudice. And this is a very bad things to do that, avoid us to active listening people, okay? I really appreciate people from Brazil because, doing many things at the time, they were so creative in solving problems, for example. The opposite side for somebody, for example, that I could feel from another kind of culture where things were doing one time by time, one by one. Okay? So be able to listen. I agree with you guys. Be able to listen with the a kind of empty mind. I use the Big Brother approach. Try to put myself on the top left corner, okay, and look at things from the top. Look how people behave in order to study a little bit with my mind empty and try to shape myself. Normally, it's me going to another environment, which means that it's myself to be shaped, to be compliant with the context. Okay, so listening, I think, is the key. I agree with you. Absolutely.
Guys, I was wondering if we could, Bernardo, do you think we could move on to the GAF question? What
Sure.
do you think?
I think so.
Can you do the honors?
Sure, no problem. So, what has been, I would say, your biggest gaffe based on ignorance of another culture? Like, what was the result? Like, what was your biggest mistake based on not having full knowledge of another culture? I have plenty, by the way.
I'm thinking here, yeah. I did many, none of them are very, very serious, but for example, a couple of years ago, I was doing a presentation in UK, in London, for a quite big audience. I'm talking probably 1,000, 1,500. And of course, I have a very open movement and hands while talking, like Brazilian people usually do. And then I started talking like this, and then I started looking at the people, and everybody was expecting me in a more formal. I was at that time representing PMI. I was the chairman of PMI. And then everybody was expecting someone with a suit, more formal, more, more. Even the other panelists. And at me, while I was talking and say, look, oh God, I did too much. I did too much. So I tried. So I tried to frame while talking. It was very, very hard time. At the end, it worked, but the people felt something like outspoken, was very, aggressive on the way I put my words. So I should be more cautious. Now, every time I go to UK, I'm very, very cautious of the way I present the words. Yeah, it's just.
Well, in international projects, there are many, chances that you can make a gaffe. Okay, one that I can remember because it was something I cannot believe in for the rest of my life was still in Cuba. After an hurricane, they evacuated us from an hotel. At that time, I was living at the hotel. They evacuated from the hotel to another. The hurricane passed during the night. We were gathered in the lobby all together. And, after the day after, I went outside and I could see Castro there looking at the aftermath. Okay. After a few days at the office, I said, we were a bunch of people. I said, oh, I saw your boss there yesterday. Meaning doing this way, because people in Cuba, they don't name Castro, they do they do this kind of gesture. Everybody frozen. And I couldn't have any kind of word to say, because people starting, looking at each other. As I said, I don't know what kind of, tremendous word, but it was a very embarrassing moment. And for that time, I learned, I tried to discuss with people, in a separate, not in public, the meaning of this. Nobody there has the custom to. For example, yesterday we had elections here. Everybody's making fun on Berlusconi, Bersani, or our political leaders. So it's kind of natural, okay. But there is a serious stuff. Nobody is able to speak about political leaders. If you want to make some trouble, some issue in your what you have to do there, if you go in this way, you can make a good success for a disaster.
Yeah. Let me just jump into what you said. I will not give an example of GAF, but here at UN, we need to be extremely careful with everything we say. For example, jokes and everything. So why? Because all jokes we tell, it's something about a specific gender, or a specific core belief, or a specific country. And this here, it's extremely sensitive, because we are doing, for example, this kind of thing regarding what you said in Cuba. This just cannot exist here, because comparing with some countries we operate, Cuba is a quite relaxing country. So you'll be in deep trouble if you do something like this. It's not only people will be freezing. So we need, and we train here to have this behavior, because first, we have different owners, means we belong to the country, to the countries. And second, we need to respect their cultural aspects. So we need to be extremely, even with the most basic thing, you need to be very cautious and very cautious. And this, I just want to drive, based on this, to a second part that we didn't discuss here, and I want to listen also your opinion. One of the things we do, we talk a lot about cultural aspects among the team, but I would wonder to see and to share with you my experience, and also listen your experience about cultural aspects on the product, on the business case side. Because this is also very critical here. So it's not only on the team, on the project team and the key stakeholders, but also on the product we build. For example, when we build a school in a country, it's not necessarily the same school, because we need to adapt to some cultural issues and cultural concerns. For example, let me give you a very simple example. Here in Denmark, it's very uncommon to see men's restroom and ladies' restroom. It's all together, means you take the one that is free. This is the cultural aspect. If you go to some other countries, men's restroom in the school must be completely the opposite side. Women's restroom should be in the upper floor and not the opposite. If you don't do that, people will not use the restroom. If you, despite of having the door, you need to have also a wall. So if you open the door, nobody will see inside. But this is part of the cultural aspect that we need to, and if we fail on this, we are failing on deliver the results of the project. For example, the way we build the road, the way we position the road, everything is related to the cultural habits, to the cultural aspects of that society. And this is something that we need to address all the time when we frame the scope of the project. So I would wonder to see your experience also on this topic, on cultural fit of what you do.
I agree with you, Ricardo. In fact, I'm, more in the telco business, okay? Which means that, the portfolio of mobile services that you can provide in a country cannot be the same that you can provide in another country, because habits, because the perceiving of some services is completely different, okay? So which means that, for example, in Brazil at that time there was a chat service through short messages, okay? Something that has a kind of success in South America, and not any kind of success or just a little success in Italy or Europe. Okay. Same thing. Developing some services or some products in a kind of country could be, or try to bring cut and paste solution, for example, something that is very nice for our managers because you know we can triplicate incomes, reducing cost because we can reuse the same technical implementation. Sometimes we cannot apply the same service to another country because of cultural aspects, because they perceive the kind of service as something different. I started living in US in 2002, and nobody was able to use short messages. If you call for a number, if you call for somebody and this guy or this lady was not available, they don't send a short message to say, okay, I will be late, or please, when you have done, can you call me back? They use the answering machine. We don't use here in Italy the answering machine as much they use in the US, for example. Okay, so which means that a successful product in one country doesn't mean that this is successful in another country. Okay.
Okay. One thing I would just one thing I would say is, although we're kind of combining culture with behavior and end user, I think irrespective of culture is embedded as to the end user itself. So whether you're implementing a product like a school or some sort of building, or you're implementing a new product as a telephone, I think it's extremely important, and you hit something there, Ricardo, which is you have to know who your end user is and what behaviors are you looking to either support or change with the product that you're looking to launch. Whether it's services or actual physical products, what exactly does that actually, how does it help or support that end user? And culture plays a big part, because that's how behaviorally the person will use the product or service that you at the end of the day are trying to provide. I think we're almost running out of time, actually, so I think that's what, John, you were going to say.
Thanks, Bernardo. Yeah, I think we could carry on all day, if we had the opportunity, but unfortunately we are running out. So before we all sign off, I just wonder if each of you chaps would be able to give one short piece of advice. So you've got a colleague, your colleague is going to go on a project out to a country that is a completely different culture from where they grew up and where they're working. What is that one top piece of advice that you're going to give to your colleague to help them succeed in a different culture? Ricardo?
Yeah, I made a quick note here. First, study the country, prepare yourself. Don't go with preconceived ideas. It's not all Americans are the same, not all Brazilians are the same. So be open to listen and to understand, and prepare yourself, okay? Prepare yourself before you go.
That's great. Giancarlo, a quick top tip for colleagues?
All the things that Ricardo just said, I would like to add, don't make prejudice, okay? And work on your cultural sensitivity, learning about how, how different the other are, okay? And so be interested in cultural difference, okay, and be able to embrace difference, okay. So which means that this joined with the a 360-degree assessment of the environment, for example, should be few items to the success of getting better, with other people that are different, that look at a life in a different way than we do.
Thank you. Bernardo, did you have a top tip in mind?
I have two quick ones. The first one is the CIA offers something called the Fact Book. It is updated typically on a yearly basis, and it gives you a very good overview on country by country, the graphics, the information that you can start off with if you're trying to understand the culture. And then the second is what I mentioned earlier, which is don't use your logic to understand the other person's logic.
Fantastic. Okay. Well, thank you ever so much, everybody. Before we leave, can you all please just let us know if any of our audience want to contact you, how they can do that? Twitter, LinkedIn, Ricardo?
Yeah, first, before I do that, I just want to congratulate you, John, and you, Bernardo, for the initiative. I love volunteer work. I think that if we do something like this, it's something that adds value to everyone. So thank you very much for the opportunity. I'm very happy to be here. People can follow me on Twitter. It's RV Vargas. And it's on the note here. And also my email is ricardo@ricardo-vargas.com. Okay, I'm very open, and just contact me. I'll be very glad to talk.
Thank you. Giancarlo?
Thank you, guys, for this opportunity too. It's a great idea. I really enjoyed participating in this show. People that want to make some question about this and want the answer, they can find me on LinkedIn, or they can send an email at Giancarlo@giancarloduranti, first name and final name.com.
Great.
Thank you.
Bernardo?
My information, or you just want me to close?
Whatever you would like to do. Over to you,
why don't we close? Well, first of all, like John was saying, thank you so much for being able to be on the show. It's always an honor to bring a diverse group of folks to be able to talk about very invaluable content that I think everyone could learn irrespective of where they are in their career. So thank you again. I guess, John, if you wanted to...
I'm John Hyde from publicsectorpm.com.
Thanks, and I'm Bernardo Trovato from the Project Box. Thank you again, everyone, for joining. Until next time, take care.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.